listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Happy Thursday, everyone. It's good to be back live.
Yes, it is.
After all the oddness and strangeness of the pagan New Year. Oh, my. I'm glad we're not like video live anymore.
Yeah, me too.
As fun as it was doing a live stream video, this is so much more relaxing, and I can be as goofy as I want, and you can make as many faces as you want. But it is good to be back again, and hopefully you're glad you're back with us as well. Hopefully, it's Thursday night. It's been chilly today, too. It's been cold here where we're at today. If you're new and you haven't been to GiveGod90.com, you want to check that out. There is some videos on there that we did 2 years ago now, but it's still relevant. It's still happening. It's still going on. If you like what you hear, yeah, I'm getting faces made at me. If you like what you hear, those like buttons, share buttons, all those things work really well. Doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps other people hear us as well. So, as I like to say, if you like what you hear, chances are your family and your friends need to hear it too. So, especially tonight, because I'm going to try to help give you some information that I hope has you reading or studying a little differently, okay? And hopefully it will help you get more out of what you're reading, what you're studying. Regular listeners know that I don't like hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is using a standardized method to interpret what is written. And quite often, the problem with that is you wind up interpreting only what you are reading. You don't, go back and look for other things. We'll get into more of that later. Something else I don't like to say, we don't need to actually interpret the Bible. The Bible will interpret itself. After all, it is the sacred word of the Creator. We should be striving to understand what was written to the people who would have been the first to either hear it or read it. It says the first 5 books of Moses were written or read out loud once every 7 years. So a 7-year-old child hearing it for the first time could hear it, understand their part in it, and be able to do it. Easy. Well, it should have been easy, but we made it complicated, didn't we? I have met a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of people say that, I try to read it, but I get so confused. Or they read it and they say, I can't understand this. And they get frustrated because what they've been taught doesn't fit what they're reading. Maybe they should reconsider some of the things they've been taught. But instead, we do our best to force all these traditions, all these legends, all these church doctrines, all the lies that we have inherited from our fathers into what we're reading. And it doesn't fit. And then we get frustrated and we put it down and say, I'll never be able to understand it. I'll just do the best I can. Well, you don't have to do that. One of the first things that we need to understand is when two people look at the exact same information, okay, They look at the same exact wording, the same, we can call it evidence because I like to say we study forensically. They look at this and they don't process that information in exactly the same way. Even two people living in the same house for many, many years, they don't process the information exactly the same way. They process it differently because they're different people. They look at it and they say, oh, this means this. And the other person says, this means this. And they think they agree, and they probably do, but they're agreeing about two different points of view from the same information. Does that make sense? Okay, as long as it makes sense to you.
We do it all the time.
It happens to us all the time. About a lot of things. So, on a much broader level, on a much more broad level, I should say, Christians are going to process the information in the Bible much differently than a Jewish person will. And that being said, the one thing that they should both agree, or primarily, the God of Abraham is the creator of everything. If they can't agree with that, they're lost. All right? That should be the foundation they build on. Now, somebody trying to introduce millions of years of evolutionary thinking into Scripture, they can't build on Genesis 1:1. It's impossible because they obviously don't believe Genesis 1:1. So when we read in the beginning, what does it mean? Now, that's that sounds like a simple question, but it kind of has a complicated answer. One of the first things we should realize is that in English, we see this as a point in time as we understand it. But the question, for me anyway, is, well, whose beginning is Moses writing about? Well, of course, he's writing about the beginning of mankind, but that certainly wasn't the beginning of God. He has no beginning. He has no end. So a better way to translate the first words, or word in Hebrew, would be, at the perfect moment of his choosing, God, our Creator, spoke, and through nothing more than his breath, his spirit, he begins to create. Now, I know that's kind of a difficult concept for some to comprehend. I mean, after all, we're born, that's our beginning, right? But somebody was before us. And because of the way we view time today, we think, oh, there must have been something before God. And we struggle with the concept that God came first. Now, an atheist will ask, well, who created God? Now, if you look at some social media places today and some other places, you're going to see that somebody actually asked that question, well, who created God? Nobody. God's God. Let him be God. Right? He has no beginning. He has no end. Our view of time was created by him. Our concept of time was created by him. Our days, our months, our years, hours, minutes, however you want to break it down, didn't exist until he spoke. And again, I realize this is kind of a difficult concept for some people because we're so used to telling time. Now, if you really want to get a really, really good idea of time and how some Middle Eastern people consider time, if you were born in the Western Hemisphere and you speak to someone from the Middle East on the phone and you say, oh, I have something came up, give me a call back in an hour. Because of the way they consider time, you might get a call back in 20 minutes. You might get a call back tomorrow. It's just the way it is because their concept of time is different than most of the other people in the world. Because they don't view time as a point. They think, oh, you've got something going on. I'll give you a call back when I think you're finished. It's not, 7 o'clock. It's, sometime in the evening. It's, or in the morning, depending. But their concept and the way they view it, the way they think about it is much different. And that is kind of how time outside of our universe sort of functions. It's later. Where Myra grew up in the islands, what was it just now? Yeah. She tells us, oh, yeah, I'll get to it just now. Well, just now might mean
This afternoon or
next year.
next year.
See, God gives us this calendar. He created time as we understand it, and it only works here in the present. We can track the past. We really can't track the future. We can project it, but we don't know what happens. So the very first words, or word in Hebrew, of Genesis shouldn't be used to point to a specific moment in time. Now, some of you may be familiar. There was, and there has been, a lot of times where folks, these sci-fi time travel things, they think they can go back to the beginning. Well, good luck with that. Because there wasn't an actual beginning prior to God speaking for us. There was only Him. So it's kind of, when we're looking at these things and we're studying these things out, don't get tunnel vision. Don't block yourself into, there's a beginning. The beginning is only our beginning, not the beginning of God. Okay? Knowing about that first word and understanding its potential can offer us understanding into many, many other things in the Bible. Okay, let's look at another verse. It should be pretty familiar to you. Go ahead and read that.
And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Genesis chapter 3, verses 14 and 15.
Okay, now the serpent, unfortunately, is most often depicted in artwork as a snake, and even some English translations of the Bible use the word snake instead of serpent. Now, one of the things that we should realize is it wasn't until after the serpent was cursed. It wasn't until after that serpent was weakened that it was to crawl on its belly. What the serpent looked like before, we're not told exactly. Sort of. Now, there's clues, and I've gone over that before, that would indicate the serpent was most likely a divine being known as a seraph. After all, there's nothing in the Bible to indicate that any of the animals could actually speak with Adam or Eve. Remember, they did not receive the breath of God like Adam did. That breath gives Adam the ability to communicate. There's nothing that tells us that the animals had that ability to communicate directly with Adam in such a way. So it must not have been, probably, I'm speculating a little bit here, must not have been what we would think of as a dragon or a reptile of some type. It was a serpent. It's described as a serpent. And there again, the divine being known as the seraph fits that description, but that comes later. These are some of the things that I hope help you as you read or study, actually, asking questions, and these questions have answers, but sometimes they're kind of hard to find. And knowing these answers should help us grow in our faith. It should help us, give us understanding. And it should also help us live the way we're designed. But probably the most important question we can ask when we're reading, when we're studying, when we're digging into these things is this simple question. Was it translated properly? Anytime you take any concept out of its original language, you're going to lose certain aspects of meaning. It doesn't matter what it is. And I know that not everybody has a desire, not everybody has the opportunity to learn a foreign language, but a basic working knowledge of Hebrew and sometimes Greek, it can help answer a lot of your questions. Now, a verse that came up earlier this week, and I don't know if I've talked about this or not. I've tried to avoid it just a little bit for a couple of reasons. But this verse came up out of Isaiah. Go ahead and read that.
For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it, and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7.
Now, Christians often refer to this verse as a way to identify Yeshua, Jesus. But there's kind of a problem. The verse in its original is written as if this event was currently taking place or had already taken place. It was in the lifetime of the people who were living at Isaiah's time. The child would have already been born. The burden of a kingdom would be on him. Okay? And the way it is worded, the one who named him, the one who named the child, is described as a wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace, which means it was the Creator himself who named him. Now, something that Christian pastors would never answer to my satisfaction is, how can Jesus be the Prince of Peace when he said himself, I didn't come to bring peace? And that topic usually comes up around Christmas when they use this passage to describe the birth of Yeshua, Jesus. It drives them absolutely nuts, because I was willing to ask the question that they couldn't answer. Well, I'm going to have Myra read something from the book of Hebrews that might help us understand a little bit about what's going on here.
The law is only an unclear picture of good things coming in the future. It is not a perfect picture of the real things. The people under the law offer the same sacrifices every year. These sacrifices can never make perfect those who come near to worship God. If the law could make them perfect, the sacrifices would have already stopped. The worshippers would be made clean, and they would no longer feel guilty for their sins. These sacrifices remind them of their sins every year, because it is not possible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 1 through 4.
Okay, now the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, and I'm going to speculate just a little bit here to some extent. The prophets as well offer us illustrations, these unclear pictures, shadow pictures, if you will. Shadows of good things to come if you're looking at King James. These illustrations are of future events. And, while most people would agree that this passage is actually referring to the feast outlined in Leviticus 23, I think there's some similarities we can draw from some things in the prophets as well. So, the passage from Isaiah is probably referring to King Hezekiah, but it actually does show us an illustration or a shadow picture of a future event, doesn't it? Sort of. And here's something to think about. If it happened during Isaiah's time, that we can now look back and say, well, this fits another place kind of in a way. It's an unclear picture, but it sort of fits. Is there anything going on today? What might be happening in the world today that might give us some illustration or an unclear picture of an event that will happen in the future? Can anybody say war in Israel? Think about that. It's been prophesied by a lot of different prophets in a lot of different ways. But is what we're seeing today an unclear picture of what's going to happen in the future? Something to think about, because I think it was Amos who said that God doesn't do anything unless he tells his prophets first. Interesting way to look at that, isn't it? I go into a lot of detail in Inheriting Lies, if you're interested, about the events of Leviticus, or the feast of Leviticus 23 and the events in the life of Yeshua. Might want to give that a look-see. I'm going to say this, and kind of tongue-in-cheek, a little bit. We need to stop reading the Bible the way we're used to reading it. We need to read it, as Myra likes to say, what was it? Just
read the words.
Because most of the time, or often, even in English, we get what it says, as long as the translation's accurate. And I'm going to add a little something here. Ask questions and find the answers. The Bible has the answers to the questions you're probably asking, but you were never told how to find them. After you verify the translation that you're reading is correct, try a good cross-reference. Cross-references are invaluable when you're studying. And even when you're just like, what does that mean? If you go find a good cross-reference, and I mean a good one because none of them are actually complete, it'll take you to different places and you can read about similar events, similar accounts, and begin to put things together. The Bible really is the most hyperlinked text you're ever going to find. The problem is I don't think anybody's ever going to be able to connect all the dots because there's so much there. There is just so much there. I connected Ezekiel 18:19 through 24 with Revelation 20:12. I haven't found that in any cross-reference, but it exists. It's there. You don't believe me? Go read it and look it up and see if Revelation 20:12 and Ezekiel 18:19 through 24 aren't connected. Because where else will those things be mentioned? Okay. Something I want to see is a great biblical Hebrew scholar and a great Christian scholar collaborate on a cross-reference. I want to see that done. Not to try and prove anything one way or the other, not to try to convert anybody, but to read the words, look at what's written, and say, this matches this, and it matches that, and it matches that, and it matches that. We can leave this one out because it doesn't have anything to do with that event or that particular whatever's going on. But just look at it and see what fits and put it all together. Now, could you imagine how big that cross-reference would be? It would take up a volume of encyclopedias, about that much space on a bookshelf or more. Now, the closest thing I've seen to that actually is Nehemiah Gordon and Keith Johnson. But even with as much detail as they go into with just the few things they've looked at, they don't have time to go into all of the details. And the problem is they have to pick out which critical questions they're not going to answer. And that's kind of sad. But if they had the time and the money and the energy to do it, it would be an interesting collaboration for them. All of these things to say, don't be afraid to look at it. Don't be afraid to consider things that nobody else has put together before. It might be for your understanding. Don't be afraid to ask the questions that nobody's asking. Don't be afraid to say, wait a minute, in the beginning, who's beginning? Don't be afraid to say, is this an accurate translation? Don't be afraid to, I'm not sure what this means. Is there someplace else that somebody else has found? I'll look at a cross-reference and read these other passages that are associated with this. Or maybe don't be afraid to take it upon yourself to say, I've read about something similar. I need to go find that again and make the connection for yourself. You really want to get the most out of your Bible? And I've said this before, slow down. Myra said it before. Read the words. Verify what you read. Pray and meditate. Figure out the questions that you want answered and find the answers. You know, we have more access to information today than ever before. And more people are finding answers to their questions. But I am also going to give you this warning. There's a lot of very unscrupulous people in the world, and they're willing to sell you lies. They're willing to sell you their lies as answers for your questions. So be very, very wary of who you listen to. Make sure that the spirit you're following is the spirit of the Creator. Don't believe it just because it sounds good. But make absolute certain. You know, one of the problems we have today is nobody wants to offend. Nobody wants to be critical of some of these self-proclaimed prophets we have out there running around. You know, I'm certainly not calling myself one, that's for sure, because what I'm trying to do is put what was already written together in such a way that you can hopefully get some benefit out of it, to be able to understand it. Hopefully change your lifestyle and improve your life, and hopefully help you live the way you're designed to live. But there's a lot of people out there who are willing to tell you what they think sounds good to you if you're willing to pay for it. So be very, very careful with that as well. Hopefully that's helped you. It's kind of hard to give about a 2-hour lesson in 30 minutes, but hopefully I was able to at least send you in the right direction. So until Monday.
Until Monday.
We wish you many, many blessings, everyone.